Hello, and you are back in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. This is our 71st episode, and today we'll be discussing that abortion is a losing issue, and the DOJ uncovers even more COVID fraud. So we're going to get right into this. I talked a while ago, almost like 2 months ago, with Lee. She was my first guest in the Velvet Room. I do featuring episodes occasionally when scheduling can allow, and if I can get people to agree to come on this little podcast of mine. And I had her talk about, or basically, we talked about abortion being an issue that was going to be pushed this election season, and I am completely right on that. So I will if I remember, I'll link that episode in the description. She had a very interesting perspective on that, having had gotten an abortion. I'm pretty sure from if my memory serves me correctly. And what she said was that abortion would be a losing issue for both sides. It wouldn't benefit anybody, and I would think I would slightly disagree. A lot of people talk about conservatives can't conserve anything. What have modern conservatives been able to conserve? And I disagree. Conservatives have been able to conserve one thing, and that's their ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And this is the opposite of the jaws of victory in terms of abortion. It is very much a losing issue for conservatives, definitely. And I say most likely even the left wing, because it just gets people extremely angry, and it doesn't necessarily galvanize people to any sort of meaningful action, because they were like, well, we voted for the blue no matter who, and abortion got banned on his watch, or the Roe v. Wade got overturned on his watch, quote unquote. But I've got an article from Trending Politics News. I've got two. Headline, the first one reads, Carrie Lake shocks supporters with surprising statement. The statement basically being that she's the only woman and mother in the race. She's running for the U.S. Senate, and she agrees with Trump. Trump said that he wants the states to make the decision on abortion, not to have any federal policy one way or the other, which she agrees with. She says, as your senator, I will oppose federal funding for abortion, federal bans on abortion, and as your senator, I will fight for baby bonuses, making adoption more accessible and affordable. And that was the whole yada yada thing. So what really drove Carrie Lake to make this statement was that apparently the court in the Arizona Supreme Court reinstated a 160-year-old law effectively enforcing a near total ban on abortions. And now Joker's putting his tinfoil hat on and saying this is probably something that was pushed explicitly to make abortion more of an issue so they can use it as a cudgel to make people vote against Trump. They're going to slam this as being something that Trump did because he said, well, the states should be the ones to make the decision on this, and saying, well, this is what the states are going to do, right? So, we need the federal government to have this to allow unfettered access to abortion, because, think of all the sexually assaulted 12-year-olds that need access to abortion, which, that's one thing. Rape is a very awful thing. If you do get pregnant as a result of rape, again, I do not get that, but I don't think the state at all should be the one who makes the decision on whether or not an abortion should be performed. If you have a right to an abortion, if you have, if the unborn child has a right to not be aborted. Doc and I on Wednesday talked about abortions. Well, not abortions, but we talked about rights, right? And it's very easy to say that you don't have the right to food because that requires access to somebody else's labor, and that violates your property rights. You own yourself, right? And anything that violates your ownership of self, or the things that you accrue by using your yourself, your labor, your time to acquire more things, and those become your things. Anything that violates that is a violation of your rights. And now abortion is very much a complicated issue, because you can go and say, well, the woman and the abortionist are both voluntarily deciding to do this, but then again, the unborn child has no say in whether or not they want to be aborted, and you can argue, have that self-ownership inherently from the time of their conception. So I definitely think you can be a pro-life libertarian. I don't think that's necessarily something that is illogical or not becoming of a libertarian. It's just there's very much a gray area. But the state is not the one to weigh in on the decision-making process of like whether or not abortion is a right or not being aborted is a right. So on and so forth. The government should not have any say in that at all, and that includes the states, right? But again, I do think this decision from the Arizona Supreme Court is something that's being pushed explicitly. Like, this was not something that they would have done otherwise if it wasn't so close to an election season, to make abortion more of an issue, pinning it on Trump because he said the state should do it, and then also setting up a case to repeal the 10th Amendment so that way the federal government can have even more power over the population than it already does. But again, that's me getting a little bit conspiratorial, a little tinfoil hat. If that's too much tinfoil hat for you, then I apologize. If it's not enough, I also apologize. But that's my take on it. I don't think it's going to do anyone any good. Most people have dug their heels in on this issue, and no one's going to be convinced one way or the other. And for Trump, the people, his base is going to be pro-life mostly. You'll have some people who will be like, okay with it, but the ones who are very passionately pro-life want a full-on federal ban of abortion, right? They want it to be illegal in basically most, if not all cases. Maybe like incest or rape are the only situations in which abortions should be performed. But even then, you'll find people, but who wouldn't want that. It's just basically the Bryson Grace that like anything other than a full federal ban of abortion means that you want to murder children. That's the mindset they're operating on. And then you've got the other side, the explicitly pro-choice people that think that like abortion should be normal. Like everyone should get abortions, unfettered access to abortion. If you say, well, you're 9 months pregnant, you're literally about to give birth, you're in labor, you can't have an abortion, you're denying like basic bodily autonomy and denying people their access to their personhood, right? Because instead of womanhood being associated with childbirth and rearing children and the unique way that women are biologically wired to raise children, because they carry them, they birth them, they breastfeed these children, it's more along the lines of like being able to abort the child is much more important than having the children, raising the children, and building a family. I think that's also one of the reasons why abortion gets pushed so heavily in the modern culture. But I think I've gabbed on enough about this. We're going into the second trending politics news article, and this is the DOJ releases breathtaking report detailing rampant COVID fraud during the pandemic. Now, this is something that's been known, but I just want to cement the record that you had the CARES Act, you pumped billions and billions of dollars into the economy. I think it was like you had like two $1 trillion spending packages within like a year of each other during this COVID nonsense that went on. And of course, a lot of it went to fraud. $200 billion in fraud was committed due to COVID aid payments and related government programs. However, the DOJ states that only $1.4 billion has been clawed back despite congressional funding to investigate and litigate these crimes. It also notes that more than 3,500 defendants were charged with federal crimes, and there were more than 400 civil settlements and judgments. So again, a lot of people took advantage. And again, the government has no idea where the money goes once they take it from you, or once they have the Fed printed out for them. The Pentagon has $1 trillion in accounting errors, so I am 100% sure that there's even more fraud that happened during the COVID time with all this COVID money that was flying around than they even know. So it could be like double, triple, or it could be maybe just like a couple million more. But anyway, all ridiculous. It's one of the reasons why we're dealing with this huge inflationary period, why the cost of living has gone on so much, because we pumped all this money into the economy artificially after forcing everything to a halt, causing this rebuild. So the economy is just in this crazy flux that we've barely started to recover from. And then Biden comes in and does all of these very negative things for the economy while just making the state press its thumb on free trade and enterprise even more so than the state already was doing before. So this is just something that I want to cement for the record, that the government is a fraudulent organization, criminal, and financially especially so. And knowing that, or having some sort of like awareness of that. People feel no qualms scamming the government, and honestly, I'm 100% okay with it, but what I'm not okay with the whole system existing, the taxation, the fact that they can steal this money and then redistribute it and then have the Fed just print money out of thin air, which again causes inflation, makes the dollar less worthless, and then the government can just piss it away on all this useless stuff. And again, people are committing fraud. People weren't paying rent when they still had their jobs because they were legally they didn't have to. So people took advantage, people committed fraud during these COVID times when you had all this money coming in, when you had these rent pauses paid, when people didn't have to pay on their student loans. That's one thing, but people did not do financially sound things during the COVID pandemic on the individual and the societal level, and we are reaping those benefits now. That's why gas got nearly to $5 a gallon. That's why it costs an arm and a leg just to get eggs and milk and bread from the grocery store, is because of the decisions that the state made, and Trump was president at the time, so he has a lot of responsibility to bear for signing his name on these bills, because, you know, he was just fine with having his name be on the stimulus checks because he's that type of guy. Whatever. But he bears some of the brunt in this. And again, I don't think it would have been as bad. He wouldn't have shut down Keystone. He would have kept the opportunity zones. There's a lot of good economic things that Trump did. And he would have kept doing those, and the inflationary period we would have hit wouldn't have nearly been as hard, but it still would have been bad. And of course, all this COVID fraud would still have happened, and we would still have to be dealing with that, or the state would have to be dealing with that. So again, the government just banned a bunch of criminals. You got more people who will just, you know, defraud them because they are aware that on some levels, like, hey, you know, they're all thieves anyway, so I might as well steal from them. No honor amongst thieves, and this is prime evidence of it. So I just want you all to remember that. I want you all to be aware that whenever the government does welfare statism, giving money to people, it's rife for fraud, and that's one of the reasons why it should not be done. But with that, I'm out of here. I hope you all enjoyed this one, and I'll be back Tuesday. Joker is out. Thank you for being in the Velvet Room with Joker the Fool. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, whether you're listening on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, or Substack, and be sure to subscribe to my Substack, velvetroompublishing.substack.com, to keep up with Machine to Man and all my other projects.